Hello, class of 2025. I'm Peter Gutowski, Deschutes County's Community Development Director, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to the department. My presentation is one of 6 that you will be experiencing before we meet in person on Tuesday, October 28th. So let's go ahead and get started. The Community Development Department's mission is to facilitate orderly growth and development in Deschutes County through coordinated programs that involve land use planning, building, on-site wastewater, and if necessary, code enforcement. We're one of just a handful of counties in the state of Oregon that offers and integrates these services under one roof. Our customers and the general public are able to come into our lobby hours Monday through Friday. In addition, we provide a wealth of information online that allows our customers, our design professionals, to submit their applications electronically. The Community Development Department utilizes a number of advisory committees that are appointed by the Board of County Commissioners, in addition to hearings officers, which are independent land use attorneys under contract. The Deschutes County Planning Commission provides policy recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners. An example would be the state legislature changes state law to allow for rural accessory dwelling units in certain locations in the rural environment. Based on the board's direction, staff develops code that would allow for these rural accessory dwelling units. The first hearing that takes place is with the Planning Commission. And they take testimony, receive the materials, the justification, and ultimately make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, who then open their own hearing as they consider changing local code, in this example, for property owners, eligible property owners, to cite a rural accessory dwelling unit. We also rely on hearings officers for land use applications that are controversial, complex, or have a matter of first impression. These types of applications often have engaged members of the public. They may even have some opponents. So hearings officers can convene their own hearing, organized by staff in the planning division, take testimony, review the application materials, and ultimately make a decision that, if it's not appealed, allows somebody to go forward with their land use entitlement to, say for this past example, to develop a rural accessory dwelling unit. Hearings officer decisions can be appealed, and if they are, the Board of County Commissioners has the opportunity to determine if they want to hear an appeal or not. We also have a Historic Landmarks Commission that provides guidance on historic preservation policy, and rarely, there are some instances where our historic resources that we have inventoried are making modifications to the property that requires the Landmarks Commission's review and ultimate approval. An example would be Peterson Rock Garden. It's recently been acquired, and they are contemplating new improvements for that site. And if they do, we would take that application to the Historic Landmarks Commission for their consideration. And then lastly, we have a Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. They provide policy recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners as it pertains to bicycle and pedestrian improvements in rural Deschutes County. Now, the Community Development Department consists of 5 divisions. There's the Director's Office, or really it's part of administration. We then have the Planning Division, which consists of current and long-range planning sections. We have an on-site wastewater division. They are agents of the state. They administer state code pertaining to on-site wastewater treatment and improvements and alterations that can impact the functionality of a septic system. The same is true for our building division. They are agents of the state. Our building official takes the lead and provides the requisite guidance for his staff to administer the state building code. And then lastly, and as important, is we have a coordinated services and code enforcement division that coordinate these various types of permits so that they're well orchestrated and synchronized. And the event that there's code enforcement, obviously that would involve a circumstance where someone didn't get the requisite permits and they find themselves addressing that violation and remedying it accordingly. This slide's important because it illustrates in orange the area that is subject to Deschutes County's jurisdiction. It's the rural county that doesn't represent federal land. Deschutes County consists of over 3,000 square miles, and when you factor in federal land and our municipalities, our cities, 78% is outside of our jurisdiction. Now, two follow-up remarks. One is our building division provides building services for the cities of La Pine and Sisters. And in a few areas within our municipalities, our on-site wastewater division also provides oversight for those that are still relying on septic systems. This is the second to last slide of my presentation, and you will recall on the front end, it's the first of 6 that you will be experiencing that provide an overview of the Community Development Department. One of the earlier slides that I showed summarizes our mission statement, which is to facilitate orderly growth and development in Deschutes County through coordinated programs. To provide context of how we do this on a regular basis, the rest of the presentations are going to focus on handling and processing rural accessory dwelling unit applications. This slide illustrates how our divisions coordinate across the Community Development Department. Using rural accessory dwelling units as the example, it starts with the Planning Division, confirming that the underlying zone allows a rural accessory dwelling unit. Then, assuming it does, one has to ensure that the existing septic system that's serving the primary dwelling is capable of handling the additional wastewater load from a rural accessory dwelling unit. What then follows is the requirement of obtaining a fairly straightforward land use permit from the Planning Division and a septic site evaluation that will ensure that the existing septic system can accommodate the new rural accessory dwelling unit. And if it can't, what steps need to be taken to modify that septic system? Now, assuming that there are no issues associated with the septic system, one would then provide architectural designs for the rural accessory dwelling unit, as well as a septic permit showing how the septic system is going to get modified to serve this new dwelling unit. Those plans are submitted and reviewed and coordinated across the department, and then permits are issued. The design professionals representing the property owner are then building the structure and installing the septic system. Those require periodic inspections based on certain stages of the project, and then ultimately the project is final. So this concludes my overview of the Community Development Department. Will Groves, our planning manager, will provide greater details about how rural accessory dwelling units align with our land use and zoning obligations. And I will see all of you on Tuesday, October 28th. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Will Groves, Planning Manager for Deschutes County. Today, I'll be telling you about the Planning Division at Deschutes County. The Planning Division primarily deals with zoning, how land is used, development standards, how that land is developed, and land divisions, the creation of new parcels and lots in subdivisions. Planning Division is comprised of 2 divisions: long-range planning, where we have 3.5 planners planning for the future, including development and implementing land use policy with the Board of County Commission, Planning Commission, and community and partner organizations. The Long-Range Planning Division is tasked with updating the comprehensive plan and zoning regulations, coordinating with our cities, Bend, Sisters, Redmond, and La Pine, and agencies on planning projects taking place in the region. In addition, the Long-Range Planning Division participates in legislative sessions and serves on local, regional, and statewide committees focusing on transportation, natural resources, growth management, and economic development. The Long Range Planning Division undertakes major projects for the future of Deschutes County, developing and implementing land use policy. The comprehensive plan and zoning regulations are regularly updated, and the county coordinates with cities and agencies on planning projects in Central Oregon. The current Planning Division has 7 planners and reviews land use applications for compliance with county code and state law. These reviews include zoning, subdivision, and development regulations. In 2024, 660 applications were reviewed. Some of those applications are appealed or directed to public hearings with the hearings officer and the Board of County Commissioners. I will now discuss a workflow for an example project, an accessory dwelling unit. For accessory dwelling unit policy development, first, our Long Range Planning Division monitored Senate Bill 391. We coordinated with the Board of County Commissioners to receive direction to amend the county code, amended the code, and conducted public hearings with the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners to receive public testimony, and then the board adopted an ordinance to implement the new ADU regulations. When an individual property owner wishes to apply for an accessory dwelling unit on their property, they have to apply for a land use permit. This is a coordinated action that requires the interaction of land use planning, environmental soils, and our building division. To get a land use permit, a pre-application meeting first occurs between the planning division and the property owner to identify applicable rules and process. An application is submitted, and staff reviews that application and makes a decision. To the extent that either the applicant or a party to that application, a neighbor or other concerned citizen, believes that there was some error in that decision can be appealed to hearings officers, the Board of County Commissioners, and even into the state courts. When we receive an application, planners determine if the property was legally created through partition, subdivision, or deed, if the ADU is allowed in the zoning assigned to the property, if the proposed dwelling meets basic standards such as height limitations and setbacks, and determine if there are special considerations on the property such as floodplains or wetland protections that would require additional land use review. This concludes the overview of the planning process for ADUs.
Hello and welcome to Deschutes County College. My name is Galen Laird. I'm an on-site wastewater specialist with the county. Today I'll be talking about 3 topics. First, what is an on-site wastewater system? And what is Deschutes County's role in permitting and monitoring these systems? And finally, considerations for accessory dwelling units. So first, what is a septic system or on-site wastewater treatment system? It's a system that treats wastewater from a house that otherwise couldn't be served by community sewer. Typically, this means it's a rural residence. Here we have a diagram of a house being served by a septic system. Wastewater from the house flows into the tank. Solids settle at the bottom as sludge. And the other technical term you need to know is scum, which floats to the top as fats, oils, and greases. What's in between flows out into the drain field and percolates into the soil where soil microbes treat that wastewater. Oregon administers rules for these properties that are served by a septic system. Specifically, we've got OAR Chapter 340, Division 71. And it's DEQ, Oregon DEQ, that administers these rules. And they will allow counties to act as an agent for DEQ to administer these rules. So there's actually 3 layers of administration here. I'm going to take you through how we as a county handle these sites more or less chronologically. So imagine this site doesn't have a house or a septic system. As specialists, we'll go out there and dig holes to see how deep the soil is, what kind of structure it has, its texture, whether that's clay or sand, note any setbacks from wells, and determine what kind of system the site can accommodate. Then we'll work with the property owner and installer to design that system to fit the needs, whether that's a 5-bedroom house or a 3-bedroom house, fit the needs of that property. So, and then once we have that design, we move into permitting. We issue the permit, and then once the installer is installing, we'll go out and inspect and make sure that the installation is meeting these rules and our county policies. Eventually, you've got your house and your drain field, but you want a second bedroom or a fourth bedroom. That would fall under any authorizing changes, and that would be another permit that we handle. That also includes changing your residence to a commercial endeavor like a hair salon or something. Given all these changes and records, record keeping is vital to what we do and what we need to do to serve the community. Anybody who's bought or sold a house knows how important keeping good records of what's been done to the property are. We also investigate neighboring properties. What happens is a drain field eventually fails. Eventually that sludge or scum makes its way into the drain field and it clogs up, and that wastewater will surface to the top instead of percolate down. And as you can imagine, it's a foul odor when it reaches the top of the soil. Some systems require pumps or ongoing maintenance, and those are other records that we keep as well. Our final program that is within the county is our groundwater protection, and specifically in South County, we have a nitrate problem. Here's that chemical compound NO3-, and when there's incomplete denitrification, nitrates can enter groundwater where drinking water is or surface water and contribute to blue baby syndrome, and it's also a suspected carcinogen. So this slide just details a little bit more about the components of a septic system and some of the tools in our toolbox. This is just a little more detailed diagram of the previous one. What I want to iterate is that every septic system, regardless of whether it's got a sand filter or an additional ATT pod, always starts with a septic tank. You can't have, though, that sludge or scum flowing into these trenches or sand filters and gumming it up. That leads to premature failure. So we install big septic tanks. They make commercial size septic tanks. This is probably a standard 1,000-gallon, still 10 feet high. They're made out of concrete now. Typically, we've seen them in the past made out of steel, and what we know about steel is that it rusts, and so we're still replacing those from the 70s. The typical system, you'll have the tank flow into a trench, and here we have a trench. Inside that trench is a perforated pipe, and that pipe is covered with drain rock. If you were to cover it just with soil, those perforations would clog rather quickly. And wastewater percolates through that drain rock into the soil. In some sites, you can't fit standard trenches. You need, about a minimum of 225 linear feet for a typical residence. And so you can use a secondary treatment. After the septic tank, you can install what we call an alternative treatment system. And there are membranes in here that the microbes can adhere to. And as that wastewater flows through those membranes, that surface area is able to treat that wastewater to a higher degree, higher than what the septic tank could or just a standard trench. And that ATT pod might flow into a standard trench, and you could reduce your linear footage from 225 to 105 on a small property. In cases where there's high groundwater but plenty of soil, we have a sand filter, and the sand has a greater amount of pore space than typical soil, and therefore undergoes greater aerobic treatment prior to entering the soil, where it finalizes the denitrification process and in an anaerobic environment. The final thing I wanted to talk about were accessory dwelling units. And while this kind of falls under an authorization, adding a bedroom, we're actually adding a second dwelling. And so it requires a new site evaluation. It goes back to the start. We're adding a new dwelling to the property. Occasionally there's enough records out there, enough of an approval area, or sometimes there's even a large enough system to accommodate an ADU as is. But we would start with the soils evaluation, and we can add capacity to the existing system, or sometimes we just install a new system. And once we have that soils evaluation, we roll back into the design and permitting and inspection phase. So that concludes my presentation. There should be a Q&A after this presentation, but if you'd like, we're always available for your questions, specific or general. You can email septic@deschutes.org or call us at 541-388-6519. Thanks, and have a good rest of your day.
Hi, I'm Lori Wilson. I've been with the county for 10 years. I represent the Building and Safety Division, also known as the Building Department. We provide plan review, permits, and inspections within rural Deschutes County, the city of La Pine, and the city of Sisters. Our team consists of the building official, the assistant building official, plans examiners, and the field inspectors. Oregon's building codes actually start in the Oregon Revised Statutes and Oregon Administrative Rules. The ORSs come from the mouths of the electeds. OARs are the state division heads and their legal team's interpretation of what the ORS means and the way to implement the statute. Both are laws in the state of Oregon and both trump codes. The Oregon Specialty Codes, also known as the building codes, are a collection of prescriptive codes that cover commercial structural, residential structural, mechanical, plumbing, and electrical systems in our state. While these are state uniform codes, there are some instances where a local ordinance can be used to address permit requirements or certain building code requirements, such as the recent state law that allows jurisdictions to decide if they want to require the wildfire hazard mitigation requirements of the Oregon Residential Specialty Code, also known as fire hardening or R327 requirements. The building codes are uniform statewide codes using national codes as our basis. They are intended to provide a level of consistency across the state while also offering some flexibility for alternate construction methods and materials that satisfy the intent of the code. Oregon currently updates these codes on a 3-year cycle. Why do we have building codes, you ask? Well, we have building codes to make sure that buildings are safe, sanitary, and durable structures. We also have them to allow lending organizations the confidence to make long-term loans on that structure. We also have them for the insurance companies the confidence to insure the structure. And the most important is to add value and safety within our community. Next, I'd like to talk about the building plan review and inspection process. Permits are applied for online through Oregon e-permitting, where you upload PDFs of all the required documents. Once the application is routed for review, one of our plans examiners will review the documents to verify that they meet the state building code requirements. Sometimes corrections or additional information is required before the application can be approved and the permit to be issued. Once the permit is issued, you or your contractor schedule inspections. During these inspections, one of our field inspectors will come on site to verify the construction is being done per the approved permit documents. For more information on building safety, our website has some great resources you should check out at www.deschutes.org/CD. You can find things like application guides for different permit types, instructional videos for applying online through e-permitting, property and permit research tools, how to check your permit status, and much more. The state building codes are available to view online at oregon.gov/BCD. There are some useful consumer tools regarding hiring contractors on Oregon CCB website, which is at www.oregon.gov/CCB. Thank you for your time. We look forward to assisting you with your projects in the future and any and all questions you may have about your project. Have a wonderful evening.
Hi, I'm Adam Weisgerber, Permit Tech 2. I'm here today to talk to you about the role Coordinated Services plays in the Community Development Department. Here at Community Development, Coordinated Services has a commitment to customer service. We offer customer-centric personalized visits, online permit processing utilizing the Oregon e-permitting system. We use online submittals to ensure efficiency from your initial application through the review process all the way to issuance. We try to provide answers to what you need, not always exactly what you're asking. We do that by offering a rare one-stop experience. We have a planning department, our on-site septic department, and building coordination all under one roof. So we can try to provide questions to anything about your property, your project, or future developments. Now, we also offer customer one-on-one trainings. We utilize our online resources, and they're essential in today's world. And we want to teach you how to do it so you can maximize your time and you can get your permits as efficiently as possible. Here at Coordinated Services, we currently have 6 permit technicians with a mix of level 1 and level 2 permit techs. Permit technician 1 is when you're initially hired until you gain full proficiency, and that can take up to about 2 years. There's a lot to learn in this, so it can take a little bit of time. After you've demonstrated full proficiency, you're able to test into a Permit Tech 2 level. This requires ICC certification and testing through the state. Now, Deschutes County has a unique role with the permit technicians. They're cross-trained in all disciplines, where it's common throughout the state that someone specializes in planning, someone else in building, and someone else in on-site. But again, we like to offer a one-stop shop, not involve more people than necessary, and provide as many answers to your questions that we can as efficiently as possible. And that's why it's unique in Deschutes County that we're cross-trained across all divisions. Permit technicians are the bridge between experts for the community. Whether it's assisting planning and pre-application meetings to cover permit requirements, or building safety and on-site wastewater on what permits are required for the project, what order to apply, how to apply, and what's required when applying for your project. Also, site-specific inspection questions, what's required for your project and what comes next. And one of the most rewarding things is issuing a certificate of occupancy when someone has completed their full project, and this allows them to move into that new home. Also assisting code enforcement when necessary on pre-enforcement notices outlining what permits would be required for them to bring the property into compliance, and when a property owner or property representative comes in, outlining the path forward to most accurately and efficiently give them the path to bring their property into compliance. A great example of coordinated services all working together would be our ADU permit process. That's where multiple departments need to be involved and multiple requirements need to be met before your permits can be issued and your project can get off the ground. And that all starts with a septic site evaluation. That's where our on-site septic team comes out to your property and does a soil study and evaluates your existing system to see if upgrades or alterations need to be made or if a new system needs to be installed to accommodate that new dwelling going on the property. And that's all applied for through Oregon e-permitting. Once that's applied for, the permit technician like myself reviews that for completeness, requests anything that may be missing or omitted, and then once complete, we're able to send an invoice to the customer. Once that's paid, we can then route that to our on-site team for review. Once that has gone into review, you're able to apply for your planning permit. That's called a PADU, your planning application for your accessory dwelling unit on your property. That can be done in person, by email, or by mail directly to our planning department. Once that's applied for, if a new septic installation permit based on the results from your site evaluation is required, you're then able to apply for that system, again through Oregon e-permitting, for the specific system that's designated in the results from that site evaluation. Now that you've applied for your septic site evaluation and your PADU through planning to get the land use approved to have that ADU on your property, you're able to apply for your building permits. Now this can happen while you're still waiting on the results for that site evaluation to know if you need to upgrade your system or if you need to install a new system. But these can all run concurrently. So since those applications are in, you're now able to apply for your building permits. Again, that is through Oregon e-permitting, where a permit technician is going to review that for completeness, request anything that may be missing, so we can continue to keep that moving forward. Once your building permit is deemed complete, you have your site plan, your building plans, your engineering, and everything in there, we're then able to send an intake invoice and get that routed for review. During the review process, there's one additional thing that could be required, and that's a driveway access permit. And that's through the road department. We facilitate that permit for the road department. They do the reviews on these. The driveway access permit can be required if you may have an older property that doesn't have one on record with the road department, or if you're trying to establish a new driveway access to the property. It's a very easy, streamlined process for the permit, but it's one that can come up, so we wanted to make sure to let you know about that. That's the essential process, the ins and outs of what we do as permit techs at a higher level. I appreciate you taking a little bit of time to listen to what we had to say today so you can get a little bit deeper understanding of some of the things that we do here to help the county run smooth.
Greetings, my name is Dan Smith. I'm a lead code enforcement specialist for Deschutes County, and I get to talk to you today about code enforcement and how it relates to the other divisions within the Community Development Department. Currently, we have 4 specialists that are available for investigations and to enforce the current codes in the county. And essentially, our role is to try to make sure that all the rules and requirements that all the other departments that you've heard from today are being met by the different citizens in the county. Deschutes County's Code Enforcement Division enforces all the different codes from the departments within CDD and some departments outside the CDD. Our primary complaint generator is going to be the zoning requirements from planning, and that's going to include items such as RVs, commercial uses in residential zones, wetland violations, floodplain violations, and that would also include multiple dwellings or ADUs. We also enforce the on-site wastewater requirements, which would include failing septic systems and unlawful disposal, whether that be from an unpermitted structure or from an RV on somebody's property. We handle solid waste for the solid waste department in the county, and that would include junk on property, inoperable vehicles, or other discarded materials. We also enforce all the building requirements. So typically that manifests itself as items that would require permits but do not have permits or inspections, including electrical, plumbing, and structural permits. This can scale, from anything from a shop built without permits to full dwellings being built without permits. So we go through and enforce those and get those permits taken care of and adjusted as necessary. We also handle the noxious weeds program for the forester, and that includes basically invasive weed species that are growing in the county. Deschutes County's code enforcement program is citizen complaint driven, which is to say that we have to receive a complaint from an outside entity, whether that be a citizen of the county itself or another entity within the county, such as the sheriff's office, submitting a complaint. Once we receive one of those complaints, then we're able to investigate it and make contact with the property owner. But we ourselves cannot drive around and look for violations or submit complaints on behalf of the county. And so once we do an investigation and we make contact with that property owner, our primary goal at that point is for voluntary compliance. So essentially we want to provide all the information to the property owners so that they can take the steps necessary to come into compliance with the county's codes. And through that process, we're very consistent with our enforcement. The same procedure happens, whether you have a $50 lot or you've got a $4 million lot. The process is going to be the same for everyone in the county. And our primary objectives are, of course, to maintain the health, safety, and livability of the county. We want to make sure that, ideally, no matter what property that someone buys in the county or someone's living in on the county, it has, met all the requirements, whether that be for safety or whatever else that the planning department and the state has set forth. So following on to the theme of the other departments regarding like an ADU, for example, if somebody was to submit a complaint regarding an ADU that was built on a property without any permits or any approvals, we would go through the same process as before. We'd have to receive a complaint about it, and then once we were able to investigate it and confirm that a second dwelling was likely existing on this property, then we would kind of talk with the property owner, speak with them, try to figure out exactly what their goal for the structure was and see if they'd be able to meet it. Essentially we'd still have to make sure that all the requirements can be met for both building, on-site wastewater, and zoning. If all those requirements can be met, then we can provide some time for that property owner to get the necessary permits and establish all the approvals required to keep their ADU. Essentially, the structure itself must be lawful and safe. And from there, we're able to kind of work through the process through the other divisions to make sure that that item can be there. If we find out that building either wasn't built well enough to actually be an ADU or doesn't meet the septic requirements or the zoning requirements that would allow an ADU, then the structure has to be modified to be able to be something that is lawful, whether that be converted back into a shop or potentially removed altogether. Though we try to avoid that if at all possible if there are circumstances that do manifest themselves to the point where a structure cannot exist. The Code Enforcement Division strives to get voluntary compliance from property owners when possible. However, there are certain circumstances, or sometimes the property owner just isn't willing to work with the county to try to meet the requirements that we have. And so we do have different tools available to us to try to compel compliance or eventually to force compliance if necessary. Our first step after we send a notice to a property owner, just informing them that they have the violations on the property and what kind of steps they need to do to fix it. If they don't respond to that, we do have the Sheriff's Office deliver a 30-day warning, essentially letting them know that this is their final opportunity to work with us prior to us taking some enforcement action. And beyond that, we do start doing some civil penalties at that point. We issue a citation for a hearing in front of a hearings officer, and that can have some penalties depending on the type of violation that vary between $1,000 and $2,000 per violation. And we also have established daily fines that occur if the violation still isn't resolved after a hearing. So essentially it's $500 per day that starts accruing on a property that's in code enforcement, and eventually those fines can either become liens on the property or can be used by the county in a foreclosure process to seize the property if necessary. The Code Enforcement Program also can reach out to get court orders to require correction or to basically mandate that the county itself corrects the violation, and that can be in the form of an injunction or an abatement order, where the county will actually move in and resolve the violation itself, whether that be demolishing a building, cleaning up a property, for example. There are different avenues we can take, certainly when necessary, though again, our ultimate goal is to work with a property owner and get it resolved. And if people are willing to work with us, generally we can make a timeline work through a voluntary compliance agreement or some other method, but we do have the tools available to us if we need it.